Have you ever wondered what it takes to go from being totally paralyzed by fear to acting with this unshakable boldness? We're going to dive into that today by looking at day 6 of a devotional guide called 10 Days of Prayer. It's all about tackling that exact question. How do you get from fear to real solid conviction? And really, this whole lesson, it's all built around that one powerful question. I mean, it gets right to the heart of something we all feel, right? That feeling of being totally stuck, paralyzed by fear, and then trying to find the key to get past it. That's the core problem day 6 is trying to solve. Okay, so to get into this, the guide does something kind of interesting. It doesn't kick things off with some big success story. Nope. Instead, the whole lesson is built around a really famous story of failure. And that's what sets the stage for a huge transformation. And that central case study? It's the Apostle Peter. The guide picks him because he's like the perfect example of this whole journey. Why? Because he went through both extremes. You've got this super boastful, over-the-top confidence, and then a totally crushing, fear-driven failure. Yeah, this really shows the two sides of the coin, doesn't it? On one side, you have this self-confident Peter, impulsive, making these huge promises he just can't back up. But then, when the pressure's on for real, he completely crumbles. The guide points to how he denied even knowing Jesus, not once, but 3 times, all because he was afraid. This crisis, this is the starting point for everything else. So the big question is, how does someone bounce back from a low point like that to become a symbol of boldness? Well, the guide says it wasn't just a slow process. It points to a very specific catalyst, a single spiritual event that it calls the key to the whole transformation. And that catalyst? It's Pentecost. This is presented as the definitive turning point. The guide describes it as the moment when Peter and the other disciples were filled with the Holy Spirit. It was an experience that basically rewired them, turning that crippling fear into something the guide calls holy boldness. And check this out. This quote the guide uses really captures the shift. It's pretty dramatic. It shows this massive contrast, right? The authorities expected to find the apostles hiding, totally freaked out, but instead they find them lifted above all fear, just proclaiming their message with this incredible new power. So the main takeaway here is that this was a complete 180. But this isn't just a history lesson. The guide is super practical. It takes that story and translates it into a daily blueprint for anyone following along, a structure designed to help you cultivate that very same kind of boldness. And the structure is pretty immersive. It's broken down into 3 parts every single day. First, there's your personal time alone with God. Then you connect with your inner struggle, like family or friends, and it all leads up to a bigger gathering with the whole church family for a daily evening meeting. Now, during that evening meeting, the guide gets really specific. There's this key part called worship in prayer, and it's not random. It's a very structured activity with a clear, repeatable process. And here's how it works. It's a simple 3-step thing designed to get everyone focused. You start with praise, focusing on a name for Jesus from the book of Revelation. Then you get a quiet moment for confession. And finally, you ask, specifically asking for the Holy Spirit to guide you as you dig into the Word. And to make all this feel a bit more real, the guide throws in these little interactive activities. For example, there's one where the leader asks a simple question. Would you stand up alone in a room if the first person to do it got $1,000? It's a fun little thought experiment, but it's really designed to get you thinking, what actually motivates you? What does it take for you to be the first one to stand up for something? Okay, so after laying out this whole blueprint for today, the guide circles right back to its main example. It goes back to Peter to show the results of this whole process, the real before and after picture. And this quote really nails it. It says, the Peter who denied Christ, he was impulsive, he was self-confident, and that guy was wildly different from the Peter who later stood up before the Sanhedrin. The guy really emphasizes that his conversion after his big failure was the key. He wasn't relying on his own pride anymore, he was filled with the Holy Spirit. So where did all this new fearlessness come from? Well, the guide boils it down to 2 main things. Number 1, as we've seen, he was filled with the Holy Spirit. And number 2, and this is a really cool detail, the authorities recognized that he had been with Jesus. It was that combination, according to the guide, that was the source of his incredible courage. All right, to wrap all this up, day 6 doesn't just end with a nice idea. It finishes with a very direct, very tangible call to action for everybody. And they call it the Courage Challenge.
And here's what it is. It's a 24-hour challenge, and it's super simple and direct. The guide tells you to do 3 things. Ask God for courage, find one person, and then share your own story about what Jesus is doing in your life. The whole point is to take this lesson about Peter's boldness and actually do something with it right away.
So when you look at the whole thing, the guide takes you on this journey from a historic story of failure and transformation all the way to a super personal, right here, right now challenge. It leaves everyone, and I guess that includes you, with this one final question to think about. If you had to share your story with someone today, what story would you tell?